As Nelson Mandela once said, to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. This is the case presented in South Africa daily. South Africa is a country where ethnicity groups are constantly clashing and fighting. Different races are shunned upon by other races, such as the white people who are looked upon by the black majority living in South Africa. This is a clear violation of Article 2, which declares everyone is entitled to all rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind of race, color, sex, language, religion, political, or other opinion. Violation of this human right is both unacceptable and unjust. In many areas of the world, inequality is seen. The level of inequality in the streets and schools of California is nothing compared to that in South Africa. There have been numerous issues with the equality in South Africa over many years, but not enough people are helping. The Gini coefficient, a statistical measurement, calculates that South Africa has one of the highest inequality rates in the entire world. A few of the issues include xenophobic attacks, lack of assistance, mistreating of genders, lack of proper education, and intense violence. Much of the violence is caused by the racial discrimination the different ethnicities feel and show against other races who live in South Africa. Racial equality is a human right that the world seeks to achieve in order to live in the dream world where everyone and anyone is able to get along with each other simply by treating humans as humans. This idea has become more noteworthy over the decades. Civil rights activists like Martin Luther King have promoted equality through speeches and peaceful protests in the USA, but there are still riots and destruction caused by the inequality that the world cannot completely fix as of now in other countries. Some groups like UNICEF try to raise money and bring a good education to girls in third world countries like South Africa to help aid the citizens with their struggle. White people seem to have it easy in this political war, but truly everyone is struggling to help, and all those living in South Africa value a country of equality as well as civil and human rights groups. The people that believe in ending the injustice of equality are always seeking ways for a better tomorrow. The current state of inequality is affecting citizens and the government. Everyone should have the right to be who they are without being discriminated. The color of your skin should not affect how other people treat you. A democracy was not created in South Africa until 1994, meaning that recent government activities to help abolish inequality has only started a couple decades ago. This is not to say that no progress has been achieved. In fact, there have been many people willing to step up and take action against this violation of human rights. Many of these heroes came in the later years, such as Nelson Mandela, who was known for his messages of forgiveness and equality between the people of South Africa. Another reason why inequality has become such a big issue is because of the constant showings of protests and violence caused by inequality through media. Over time, media and strong believers of inequality have made this issue known to the general public. Media broadcasts news of race uprisings and riots being broken out in the streets of cities protesting against the vast gap between wages of a black man and a white man. Other common protests have to deal with xenophobia and unwanted immigrants, mainly white people and foreign nationals, coming into South Africa and living in nice areas and working at nice jobs, while the citizens have to struggle to live. Throughout the years, protests have become more and more common, as the urge for change has never been greater. Leaders and groups of people who want to change have made contributions that impact South Africa's inequality. More and more people are becoming aware of this issue, and that is because people are willing to write, march, and speak about how South Africa must be more equal in everything that is wrong with racial discrimination. One of the most famous leaders of the modern day is former President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Mandela was a demonstrator against the apartheid, which was the way the South Africans lived from 1946 to 1998. These demonstrations sometimes had a violent outcome, and in one of them, Mandela was arrested. This caused many people to become more known to the topic of inequality and aware of the people who are fighting for their human rights. Mandela was later released and became president of South Africa. In one of his many speeches about the issues of inequality, Mandela mentions, "If the conditions demanded as they were, that we should avoid any form of action which could lead to bloodshed, I would avoid that. But if the conditions were such that one could depart from a nonviolent struggle, I would do so." Mandela was a large inspiration for many other modern-day people seeking change and end to inequality. There are also many protests complaining about xenophobia and attacks against immigrants coming into South Africa. In recent news, anti-immigrant protesters violently protested, throwing rocks and injuring immigrants who came near them. One of the immigrants, Carol Lloyd, was bombarded with rocks that smashed through her car and caused multiple injuries and blood loss. This protest had been going on for 6 days, and protesters are beginning to receive violent threats from the police. Protests like these show how strongly the immigrants coming from other countries are not accepted by the national foreigners of South Africa. These actions have showed some positive outcomes, lowering the inequality rates of South Africa. Nelson Mandela had donated much of his wealth to South Africa to start charities where his presidential reign was over. These charities would help spread the peaceful messages that Mandela believes in. Although South Africa is a country where there is a lot of violence and issues with human rights, South Africa has seen a lot of improvement these past years, and as long as there are leaders fighting for human rights and people peacefully protesting for what is right, South Africa can fix itself. It is a good idea for the people of South Africa to know each other. Many times social conflict is caused between the lack of strong bonds between the two sides, which is the case in this situation. If the native foreigners and the immigrants got along and understood what was causing all the conflicts, there would be less protests, less injuries, and less violent news reports. Another hopeful option would be to get people similar to Nelson Mandela to be heard by the government. What made Mandela such a great leader was his understanding and strong composure through the chaos of all the protests. He was able to get his message across, and people listened because they knew his words mattered. If South Africa gets someone like Mandela, the tension between races is almost sure to decrease. One final way for inequality rates to decrease is for the immigrants to simply stop coming to South Africa. It has been almost a century that the natives have been protesting against the immigrants coming into their country. After all these protests and the natives' violent acts to stop the immigrants from coming, the immigrants should know that they are not welcome to South Africa in the eyes of the natives, and they would have to accept the fact the way it is. This, of course, would be a choice of last resort. It is in best interest for South Africa to lower its inequality with the first two advancements. To end the violation against racial rights, South Africa needs to accept all races so everyone can be equal.